Grace, I'm hoping that you're letting people into the waiting room.
I got right in.
Waiting.
I got right in, Linda. Oh.
Oh, great, Linda. I sent everybody a reminder.
I'm glad you did.
I just learned how to do that.
Oh, there's Lorene.
Thank you, hon.
Thank you, Nick.
My technical director.
I see Larson's mom too. Hey Jane, how are you? Okay, so go to the first slide. Justin, you can start playing.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. We'll start this off with a little Leonard Cohen. Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the...
We're doing this. This is Dustin Case. Give it up for him. You can clap quietly in your computers. First slide. My name is Linda Grimes. I'm the Executive Director of the San Pedro Waterfront Arts District. And today we're bringing you a very special Armchair Artwalk tour called the Corita Influence. And we have 5 live guests: Annette Sykitic, Judith Blahnik, Lorene DeRocco, and Connie McCosker. And I see Tim behind Connie, and a bunch of other people that it's just lovely to see everybody. So the first thing we're going to do is some announcements from the Arts District. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Okay. What did I say on that slide? Okay.
This will be more accurate.
So I just wanted to let you know that we are continuing our guided tours, and we will be leading a guided tour starting from the Artistry on the next first Thursday, which is June 2nd. Also, we're just in the process of commissioning 5 new painted storm drains. 3 of them are in the downtown core, and they are at 6th and Mesa, and then in front of Wellington Signs, and then there's another 2 in front of 6th and Harbor, across from where the other 2 are. Also, next month, we want you to remind you to look at San Pedro Today magazine. Julia Murphy and Josh Stecker very graciously wrote an article about this thought about how influential Corita was to San Pedro. And so you can have the video edition and the print edition. And we will be archiving this recording on our YouTube channel. And I'll let everybody know what that channel is after the show. And then, as always, a little commercial: donations to support our artwork are gratefully accepted through our website. Next slide. So most of you know who Corita Kent was, and I'll let you read this slide, and we repeat some of this information in the video. But I'm going to go to the video. We interviewed all of these women, and Camilla Townsend can't be with us tonight. And it was like a 5-hour video. And then with the help of the amazing Linnell Finley, we edited it down to 25 minutes. So we're going to run that video, and then we're going to come back and have a little panel discussion with the participants, and then we'll send you on your way. So Larson, if you could cue up the video.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to mention that if you have questions, we can see them in the chat and we can answer them there from the chat.
Here at Findings Art Center next to the Warner Grand Theater. And my name is Annette Sykitic. I'm the founding director of Findings Art Center.
I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and moved to San Pedro after living in Westchester, Pennsylvania. We've lived here since 1996 when we bought a house at 18th and Myler, and I am now the executive director of the San Pedro Waterfront Arts District. I thought it was really important that the rest of San Pedro knew about the influence of Connie McCosker, Camilla Townsend, Judith Blahnik, Lorraine Duraco, and Annette Sykitic. Particularly Annette. They influenced so many things about our arts and cultural life in San Pedro, too numerous to go into here, but they also were mentors to me, and it was really important that we understand the idea of process as creatives. We filmed over 5 hours of interviews with these women, and we called it down into this short summary of what we felt we all learned from Sister Corita. Mostly about process. It's a process to creatives is so important, not only if you're, making a dinner or you're making a painting or you're preparing to do a part in a play. We ask all 5 of these women the same questions.
My name is Consolina Tamburi McCosker. I go by Connie or Consolin. I was named after my grandmother.
I am Judith Blahnik.
My name is Lorraine Duraco.
My name is Camilla Townsend.
My name is Annette Sykitic.
My family moved to San Pedro when I was 12. I was born in Inglewood, California.
I moved to San Pedro with my 2 brothers, my mother and my father, in 1947.
I was born and raised in San Pedro. I left when I was 17 because I entered the Immaculate Heart community, and they were marvelous educators. I marvel when I look back at it. They were master teachers.
And I am retired from many, many, many different kinds of jobs and experiences in the community of San Pedro. I live in South Shores. I've been a resident here for 41 years, so I'm really not a real San Pedran yet. I was born in Los Angeles, so I'm a native Los Angeles girl. I grew up in what is now known as West Hollywood, which is one of the major hotspots in LA now. I was raised there, and I went to parochial school for elementary school, Catholic parochial school. And then I went on to Immaculate Heart High School, which is still in Hollywood up on Franklin and Western. And then from there, I went to Immaculate Heart College, which was just up the hill from the high school. And at the time, it was a small women's college where women were treated like they could do anything in the world and trained to do anything in the world. So that was a real benefit.
Why did they choose Immaculate Heart?
My first experience with Corita was a beautiful letter from her welcoming me to the art department. As things went on, I joined in 1967 and graduated in 1970. I went on later to get my master's degree.
I was sick at the time, and I had to write why I wanted to be a teacher. So I called my best friend and I said, I'm too sick to write or think. Would you please write why I want to be a teacher? And she did. She did a beautiful job, and I was accepted into the program.
I was mostly a stay-at-home mom at that time, thinking about going back to work, but I probably had already 3 kids.
I left at the age of 18 into the next part of my life, which involves the Immaculate Heart Order and Immaculate Heart College, yet to discover the kind of creative being that I was going to become, or probably always was. I was going to learn the relationship between learning and creating.
In college, I met Sister Corita, who was one of the teachers, and who I was fortunate enough to have a couple of classes with. But I was also in the theater arts department, and so we worked very closely with the art department.
And what did you learn from Sister Corita?
We knew her as our educator, who said to us, our basic theme was, we have no art, we do everything as well as we can. And people would say, well, what do your artists do when they graduate? And she said, I hope they would go home and be good professionals in whatever they do, be it motherhood or professional, whatever. She wanted us to be well read. She used a lot of famous quotes from famous writers and poets, and she was hoping we would follow suit with that. She felt that we as artists had a different role, and that was to influence people one-on-one. So even today when people say, oh, call your congressman, tell them what to do, and I'm saying, no, get to know your congressman and embrace them. And she taught me that it's not about telephones, it's about one-on-one. She loved me as a student because she'd say, draw 50 pictures of this contour drawing of this chair in 50 different ways. She was very strict with her work, and she'd come and she could see who were the professional artists who were taking the class, and she would have us put all our paintings on the wall, and she'd start saying, this has been said before, this has been said. And I remember one day she came to one of my pictures and she said, this has never been said before. And I said, that's for sure, because I never did it before.
If you're paying attention, if you're loving the world and paying attention to it, I can't imagine a better way of being. But I'm not a classroom. I was always avoiding a classroom situation and the structure of schools, which I know Corita could see structures changing even in schools, and I couldn't. I learned from Corita, which was an ongoing goal in my life. There is the self-expression, and then there is what you want to give to people. She was really a taskmaster about no bubbles under the glue. If you were making a box and the theme is freedom, and so you covered it with images from magazines, and it should be meticulous. If that box is holding your view of the world, your view, and you're putting your heart into it, it's a real expression coming from you, then you take care that the person who looks at it gets the same juices that you are using to express it. And any fault in there can take away, can go,
Making and creating. So the art aspect I was able to use in my life. So I was an Art to Grow On docent for 17 years, probably due to Annette and Camilla's influence and Corita. And the idea that we followed in that program, which is one of Corita's ideals, is that the important part was the process and children enjoying the process of art, not to focus on the outcome. The focus was enjoying the process of making the art.
But I was also in the theater arts department, and so we worked very closely with the art department. But the whole deal there was the influence, the culture of the college, a very liberal arts college, and very socially justice-minded, where all of that was instilled in us everywhere, not just in the art or the theater department. It was everywhere. I'll never forget, it was the first production I'd ever done. And I just realized then how much I loved production, because it is what drove me or inspired me eventually to go into any leadership positions, because it involves using team. And it starts in the very beginning, you have a concept and you have a vision, but you use a team to make it happen. It's like when I'm home painting and I have a vision, I take my little brush or my palette knife or whatever. That's me by myself. And it's okay, but I loved working with other people, actors, choosing your actors, auditioning them, your dancers, your stage managers, your lighting production, your sound production, and all of that. I love that. And then bringing them all together. And so they were all excited about this production. The creativity would come out visually from Sister Corita, would come out through feelings and emotion. It was all about thinking outside the box. You never were grounded in you have to do it this way or that way. If you did that, that was wrong. I am retired, but I'm still very active with Findings Arts Center and the Port of Los Angeles Charter High School. And I've been learning how to paint. And I've never had a paintbrush in my hand forever, or a pencil to draw or anything in my life. I was a theater arts major, so obviously my energies were directed there. I love it. It's a great hobby. It's a great time to reflect, just sort of keeps you going, especially when you're getting older and limitations of aging are, not so comfortable.
Please tell us a story about applying the lessons that you learned from Sister Corita in your leadership development here in San Pedro.
She really taught her students how to take in life with all of your senses. And she would give us homework assignments to do that. For example, she would say, take an index card, cut out a square, a 1-inch square, and look at that. Look at the world through that lens, as if you're looking through a camera lens, because you can't take in the whole world in one fell swoop, but you can take in a portion of it and focus on it. And she would do things like pick up a Coke bottle, an empty Coke bottle, and write down 100 observations of that Coke bottle. And you would think that's impossible, but we never questioned her assignments. We just did them. So if I'm doing a ceramic sculpture, I'm looking at every angle. And I'll even take a picture and look at it upside down from every possible angle you could look at. She also taught us to break out of the known. If you just do the known, you're walking in place. Take that risk and step out of what you know. That was very freeing, and it gave us permission to not do what was known and not stay within the confines of being safe. Well, she always taught us to think out of the box. And if we didn't, we were simply running in place. So, she said there's no rules to jumping into the new. So just jump into the new and do it. No one's ever been in the new before. So jump in and take the risk. And I always loved that. There's no rules about jumping into the new. The most empowering thing we can do is to empower other people. We think we have to have power. No, to empower other people is the most empowering thing we can do for each other and the planet.
She has rules that have come out. They're wonderful rules.
The rules?
There's no rules about jumping into the new.
Oh, the rules.
She's got the 10 rules of that we established, and one was listen to what you're being told and do what you're saying. One of our favorites is there are no mistakes, only make. Even the biggest mistakes of your life can be lessons learned. Live every day as a new day, accept it as a gift. And I think that's gotten me through a lot of my current health issues, and positive thinking has always been my influence from Corita. pull everything out of your teacher, and teachers to pull everything out of their students. Those are two of the rules. And so she loved me as a student because she'd say, draw 50 pictures of this contour drawing of this chair in 50 different ways. Well, I didn't know any better than to do exactly what she said.
So this book, Someday Is Now, The Art of Corita Kent. Rule number 1, find a place you trust and then try trusting it for a while. Well, I definitely believe that trusted me to be a teacher. Rule number 4, consider everything an experiment. I love that outlook on life because we are going to fail sometimes, and that's okay. We're experimenting. We learn from our mistakes or things that didn't turn out as we expected. Be self-disciplined. Or find someone wise and smart and choose to follow them. So I've been following Annette for about 30 years. Rule number 7, the only rule is work. If you work, it will lead to something. It's the people who do all the work all the time who eventually catch on to things. Be happy whenever you can manage it. Enjoy yourself. It's lighter than you think. That's rule number 9. Rule number 10, we're breaking all of the rules, even our own rules. And how do we do that? By leaving plenty of room for experimenting. And then it says, there should be new rules next week. I love this idea of sort of constantly thinking and evaluating and coming up with rules. But then if we find that something is not the best, changing it. And what a bold woman of her time in the 60s.
Please tell us a story about applying the lessons that you learned from Sister Corita.
We decided to say it's time to instill creativity into our students and our teachers. And there we went with what we learned at college and that awesome spirit of Corita. So that's where Corita first, by the way, came to San Pedro. There was nothing about Corita here in San Pedro until we did that. San Pedro is a community, a small community that's definable. It wasn't a big sprawling suburb, and wouldn't this be a wonderful place to define it with Corita's educational teachings and her spirit. And that led us to the Corita Art Center, and it led me to start the Portobello Charter High School.
In 2007, it was just a dream. We weren't exactly sure, except we wanted to continue the legacy of Corita. A group of us who were together at a Corita art exhibit sale, and we said, Corita needs to come to San Pedro. And all of us said yes. The 4 women were Camilla Townsend, Lorene DeRocco, Judith Blahnik, and myself. But we had just opened Findings Arts Center, and we wanted to introduce Corita Kent to San Pedro. Of course, there are many, many graduates of Immaculate Heart College who mostly live in RPV, who I'm learning every day. They come by the window and go, what's Corita Kent doing here? And I go, well, how do you know her? And they will say, oh, my mother went to school with her, or I was a graduate of Immaculate Heart or whatever. And so there is influence in it. So I heard that this woman was doing a play. Somehow she contacted me and said that she had heard that I was opening a Corita art gallery. How she heard, I'm not exactly sure, but it could have been through it was the Immaculate Heart newsletter. Right. She's the playwright, yes, Irene O'Garden, excuse me. And Irene asked, and I said, well, let me ask at the Warner Grand Theater if you could do it there, and it could be our grand opening for Findings Arts Center. This is the funny thing, is things have just fallen into my lap. It's not like I planned this at all. It just happened. She was thrilled because she wanted to get it on the West Coast, and here's the beautiful Warner Grand Theater. And of course, Lee Sweet said yes. We work in great collaboration with the Warner Grand ever since we've been here. That's part of who we are, is a support gallery for the Warner Grand. That's another thing we do. If they need a box officer, if they need the windows or whatever. Anyway, so Lee said yes, and we decided to have the play here to do our grand opening in honor of Corita Kent. Well, I didn't know that she would be bringing all these artists, I mean, Judith Ivey, among other artists, to do this reading of Little Heart, which is the story of Corita Kent. And it just kind of happened. It's just like many things that have happened here at Findings Art Center. And that's part of who we are, is people have a knock on the door and say, we have an idea, like the Martin Luther King exhibit or whatever. Can you do it? And that's what we're for, is open to the community. I remember one of my first serigraphs that I ever did. Serigraph is a silk screening process that we learned from Corita Kent. And we were to write poetry about what the war meant to us. And the poster I remember painting, "A war I will not fight is killing me." And I think that is been one of my philosophies of life, that a war I will not fight is killing me. And so we have to be aware of what is killing us. And our world is small, and whatever ways we could touch each other is what's important to my legacy. Recently, when the protests, the current protests were happening here in downtown San Pedro, and the community was boarding up the windows, I came down here and I looked at the windows and I looked at Corita's posters, and I said to myself, what would Corita do? Well, she certainly wouldn't put barricades up with those who were protesting. And so I took my peace signs and put them in the windows and did not board up the windows, because I felt if they needed to grab the peace, they would. Another thing about Corita is, even though we did a lot of beautiful, this was during the Vietnam War, etc., we did beautiful posters, but she would say our job as an artist is not to walk the streets, but to put our paintings on the walls, to put our messages on the walls. So our art was sent to Washington, D.C., New York, etc., in fabulous exhibits, way of protesting. And that was Corita's method. People thought she walked the street. She really wasn't a big street walker. Hers was to influence people individually.
You might be wondering why I decided that it was important for the rest of San Pedro to know about Sister Corita. Several years ago, Annette Sykitic asked me to be the MC of a presentation that she was doing of Irene O'Garden's play, Little Heart. It was a script in hand presentation directed by Judith Ivey, some of you might know who she is, and performed at the Warner Grand Theater. While I was preparing to be the host of this presentation, it occurred to me that Sister Corita has had a lasting influence on the arts and culture of San Pedro. And so that's why I thought it was important for you to meet these 5 women and see the influence that Sister Corita had on their life. Interviewing these 5 women, Camilla Townsend, Lorraine DeRocco, Judith Blahnik, Connie McCosker, and last but not least, Annette Sykitic. Not only were these women mentors and friends, but the interviews really gave me, made me fall in love with them all over again, and gave me a view of the arts and cultural life in San Pedro and their influence on it. We would not have an arts district if it wasn't for Camilla Townsend. And I am extremely grateful to all of them for spending so much time and energy talking to me and being on this program today. So it was my honor to do this, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to expose San Pedro to the work of Sister Corita Kent and her influence on San Pedro.
I'm still in love with all of you guys. That was so amazing, and you continue to be mentors. And I don't know what to ask you, except I know that we didn't quite capture everything that you are to this town. And some of the things that you talked about were interesting in terms of using team, and that process is important. Annette, I just want to, can you unmute yourself? Lorene? Annette, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, I'll start with Lorene while you're figuring that out. I can see you're talking, Annette, but we can't hear you. Can we hear her? Okay.
No.
Lorene, can you say something so if we can hear you?
Can you hear me? I'm unmuted. Wait, I am unmuted.
I can't hear her.
I'm here.
I hear her. I can hear
Sorry,
her.
some technical difficulties. Connie, I can see that you're talking, but I can't hear you either.
I could hear Laureen, that's all.
Oh, we have some.
Annette, talk to us.
Dance.
Annette, you look really Italian because of all we
Write it on something and hold it up. Write it on something and hold it up.
It'll be backwards.
Yeah, it will be.
Oh, that's right.
Can you unmute for Annette as the host?
Oh, yeah, you can. Right. You should be able to.
We'll work on that. Can you help me?
Mute. Unmute.
Unmute.
Unmute Annette. Can you do that?
We'll work on that. And Larson's over here trying to figure that out. We can start with Judith.
That was pretty good, Lorene.
You, Lorene. First of all, I want to say to Judith that I'm blown away that you have a poster in the back of your background that was the first mural that we ever painted. And I'm sorry that Camilla can't be here tonight. She's taking care of her husband, Stan. But Camilla mentioned some concepts here, and I wanted you guys to expound on about the use of team. And you've all displayed that. And so, Judith, how did that come up for you in your life, using team effectively based on the lessons of Corita?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I went into the theater as well. So I had that wonderful experience. You know, when you're working with the team, Corita had a little saying that when we're doing things or making things, we are committing acts of hope. And when a team gets together to do any kind of project, you can feel it when we all know where we're going and what we want to happen. And we're listening to each other and sensing each other and solving problems together, that nourishes the hope. Doing that, I mean, I carried that into my life. My choice was the theater. And I studied with Sister Ruth Marie Gibbons, who was a strong friend and ally of the art department in Corita. And I studied with her soon after she had just gotten her PhD and had brought to my attention the wonderful things that were going on in experimental theater in the world. And not that I knew here yet in Los Angeles. So I was very excited to go see this world that she had just come from. But Joe Chaikin in the Open Theater and what they were doing in New York, Richard Schechner in the Garage Theater, these actors reopening old Greek mythology and doing them in a very different way, pushing boundaries. And I was so ready to hear that because of the first year I was at college, I was very influenced. I didn't get involved in the theater for the second year. So Corita was the one who opened my heart. And I was instantly in this culture of open and see and change. And so I was ready for not just the team activity of the theater, but the pushing the envelope of the theater. After graduation, I was offered a job at the Mark Taper Forum, and I didn't want to go there because I didn't think it was experimental enough. And I wanted to somehow get to New York, because Ruth Marie Gibbons, Sister Ruth Marie Gibbons, in the year prior to my joining, had taken the entire theater arts department, the juniors, to New York, found housing for them, and she went knocking on doors with all these experimental directors, and Joseph Papp at the Public Theater, and they all talked to her. The actors got workshops with the theater students, and so that's what I wanted. And the school wouldn't fund it 2 years in a row, so I couldn't wait to get to. But I went down to interview for the job, and lo and behold, it wasn't Gordon Davidson who interviewed me, but the casting director, Michael Montel. I walk in, and he had just finished casting The Trial of the Catonsville Nine by Daniel Bergen. Daniel, wait a minute. Laureen, help me. Dan and Philip Berrigan.
Oh, Daniel Berrigan.
Daniel Berrigan. I was making him Bergman. Berrigan. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll stick around. They have a whole theater a whole series of theater pieces that were not what we called museum theater. They were all new experimental pieces. So it took 5 or 6 years and growing there and directing there to get an NEA grant to go to. Actually, I got to work at the Public Theater in New York. But the team and the collaboration fed the rest of my life. When I left the theater, I still was involved in great creative collaborations. I've always worked in teams. I was a very lonely writer for a while, but I'm back to
inspiring too, that that you embody that in your day-to-day work, and was one of the things I learned from you as well. Laureen, one of the things that you said was, don't be afraid to jump into the new, and I really appreciate that. That sometimes we want to stay in our own comfort level. Do you have an example in your work life of how that happened for you?
Well, actually, I'm noticing my dear pal Jane Gormley is on this call. And hi, Jane. And Jane and I worked together at Angels Gate. We would meet together to brainstorm the field trips when the children arrived in the buses and we'd take them through the galleries at Angels Gate. We were the ones that would put our ideas together as to how we can take them through and how we could follow up with a connective art experience. And I know I can't speak for Jane, but if I had come to the table with my own head, with my own ideas, I'd probably just be looking out into space. But we would get together and we would brainstorm and we would work off of each other, and it's magic. I always work to much better, and I'm always much more creative in collaboration, because one idea sparks another, and we'd come out with these amazing, I have to say, they were amazing experiences and greatly successful, and the children loved them. So it wasn't my own creativity that came to that table. It was the magic that happens in the cauldron when you create together and spark off of each other.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Jane.
I'm gonna leave Annette to last, since now she got her sound back, and I wanted to talk to Connie. Connie and I are sort of second generation Corita influencers, and one of the things that you were talking about was the rules, and you read us all the rules. Was there a particular rule that resonated with you?
Well, I was going to go back and just mention the team idea. because I think I don't have the rules memorized. But I was just going to speak to each of the others and mention their influence on me. Laureen, I'm not sure if I've met you before. I know other Duracos in town,
I don't
but
think I'm a person, but
yes, I'm not sure. But I wanted to say what you mentioned about empowering others being the most important thing that anyone can do is something that I feel that I've lived with, and because of Annette in all our years of teaching ESL and having a family literacy programs where we empowered women and families to succeed. I have a little background noise. Is that too much? And maybe I should pause.
it's fine.
It's fine. Okay. And then Judith, you led an amazing retreat one time, maybe 2012 in Santa Barbara, where you caused us to think in a new way with very physical activity. And I remember many people in the group being hesitant, but once you led us, everyone loved the experience, and it caused us to be able to think about the subject matter, which was saving the family literacy programs. And Camilla was my principal in adult education for many, many years. And she was always creative. Okay, going back to rule number 1, trust. Camilla trusted me as a teacher. She trusted all the other teachers as well. She didn't cause an environment where teachers were competitive with each other. It was a shared environment where teachers could feel free to learn from each other. And the most important thing, again, I learned from Annette, is the best thing you can do is connect people. So I've started to be aware, and when I meet a person and then I know another person with a similar interest or cause, I try to facilitate an introduction, because those two people could do something great together, and it doesn't always have to involve me. But it's just been amazing to know Annette for 30 years and just following her wherever she leads me.
Annette, you taught me so much about what Connie's talking about connectors. That, you know, those of us who are creative souls that want to bring people together, connection, and, oh, I know somebody that can help you with that. And I wanted to ask you to talk about the Ukrainian exhibit and that experience of your making connections.
Well, I can honestly say I started all this connection because Pedro girls have to know everybody from a very early age. In case you're in trouble, they know you and will save you. That's a sidebar. But I owe all of it to the Immaculate Heart community. And when I was very young and the community was just in transition, etc., I didn't know what I was getting into, but thank God I did end up doing what I was doing. And I received the education from the Immaculate Heart community and went on. And I have to give honor to Lenore Dowling, who was Corita's partner at the college. And she was my mentor, my official mentor. And I remember my first job, I thought, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And Lenore goes, I have just the job for you. Now, I was called by a school in Ventura. It'll be perfect. You teach in Ventura Monday through Friday, and then you just drive to Santa Barbara every day and work at La Casa de Maria also, and do the work at La Casa de Maria on the weekends. And I totally trusted her. What a life it brought me to. Then I went into other ministries of youth ministry, etc., and was in transition of that. And a beautiful Immaculate Heart community member, Leela Justin, and I were on a committee. And I remember that day we were so broke, and I had one can of Starkist tuna left in my closet to feed this luncheon. And Leela was a little late. She walked in and she said, I need a teacher. I need to find a teacher. And the other two had been mentoring me about why did you consider adult education in ESL? And so Leela walked in, they go, hey, why don't you hire Annette? And I said, I have a master's, but I don't have a degree yet. She goes, well, I'll wait for you. Just finish up and I'll be there and I'll wait for you. So that began my ESL experience and the walk into adult education. And then I met Connie at a party one day and she said, I hear you're in adult education. And I said, yeah, I am, like 1 week, but I didn't tell her that. Oh, yeah, I am. And she says, well, can you help me find a job? And I said, yeah, sure. So I went back to Leela, who trusted me because we're community members together. I said, I've got this great gal. She speaks 5 languages. She's, the best. And she's okay. So Leela hired her. Well, I exaggerate, Connie, you know that. So Leela hired her. And from then I'd call Connie and say, I found you a better job. We don't have to work nights. We could work days. And then we both, I met, thank God, another Immaculate Heart community moment was Noreen Naughton. Those of you of the former Immaculate Hearts world, Noreen Naughton was working with Camilla Townsend. And Camilla said, I need to find someone in the IHM spirit who would take over our citizenship. And so Noreen recommended me. So I got hired in San Pedro through Noreen Naughton because of her recommendation. Wow. And of course, the rest is history. And it was fabulous. Then what happened was it was time to retire after all the things I did in those 10 years, or 20 years actually. And we came up with Findings Art Center. And the ultimate is this week. I think it is the best exhibit we've ever had in our lives, the total purpose, and that is the Ukrainian Women's Art Show. And the woman and her daughter and her dog arrived 1 week into the war. And she contacted Linda, and Linda put it out there and said, anyone want to help this person have a show? And so I called her, and first she said, well, I have this other Ukrainian man, and that's fine. And I said, okay, well, come over because I have lots of art supplies. I'll give them to you. So she came with her twin sister, who was the link to bring them here. And the rest is history. I said to her, they wanted to pay their lunch. And I said, oh, no, that's the rule in San Pedro. If I invite you, I pay. If you invite me to dinner, you pay. And they said, oh, well, we have the honor of having you for dinner. And I said, oh my gosh, borscht. I'm thinking Ukrainian food, of course. Then we began the journey of friendship. And it has been incredible. This woman was the head curator in Kiev at a museum. And she said, well, I'm not an artist, but my family are artists, but I'm just the curator of this museum. And I'm thinking, whoa. Anyway, what has happened is they have this show up all month. They're there every day. They show up, maybe 1 or 2 people, and they don't care because they're back in their environment of being in a gallery. And the show is exquisite. And thanks to the Immaculate Heart contribution, we're able to make a generous contribution of purchasing a number of pieces of their art. And it's just been one step after another of phenomenal. So right now I'm going to give it a little plug that this Sunday, 1 to 5, is an open house reception at Findings Art Center, totally free. Come and taste that Ukrainian food because they're providing the food, and come and enjoy the spirit. She has a sister in Ventura who's an artist. Some of her work would be displayed. She has a sister in Florida, and that was her connection to get out of the country. However, they did the long trek during the war outbreak across the country to get out of the country. But by grace of God, the family had a dream, had a vision that this was going to happen, so they had their passports ready to go. Anyway, I think I've said enough about that. But the Ukrainian women, she called today and said, how can I ever thank you for what you've done for me? And I said, well, first I want your friendship. She goes, we guarantee it all. I said, okay. And meaning all, her mother is here, who's 87 or 86, wrote a book on Ukrainian costumes of every village in Ukraine, and paint, well, I don't know if she wrote it, but she painted every painting of every costume. So the mother's here, and it just goes
Through
on
First
of
Thursday,
connection.
right? I'm sorry to interrupt you. This show is going to stay up through First Thursday.
It's going to stay up for the next First Thursday also. Also, we just agreed to open for Fleet Week on the Thursday night of opening of Fleet Week next Thursday. So they're like, oh, sure, we'll show up. We'll show up. But I told her, well, you know, all I ask for is your friendship and a few, you know, occasional bowls of borscht. And they said, oh, that's easy. We can do that. So I've got soup in the waiting, which is great.
So we just have a few minutes left. Was there anything you wanted to say that I didn't ask you or that didn't make it into the video? Okay. Connie, was there anything I didn't get to? Sometimes I'm going to ask you to make a family tree because there's a lot of McCoskers.
Okay.
5 of them are yours, right? And then you have a grandson.
Yeah. That is true. I just wanted to say another very important thing I learned from Annette is the sharing of resources. And when someone offers you something and you want to say no thank you because you already have whatever it is, take it, because then the next day someone will ask you for that very thing. If you start being aware and open to that sort of spirit of sharing of resources. So I've learned that. And yes, my trunk, my car is a resource center.
And it too, every day.
I have, it just occurred to me, or Lorene.
No.
I was just going to say, when you said, do you have anything else to say? I saw a serigraph, one of Corita's very early serigraphs. It's a quote from E.E. Cummings: "Be of love, more careful than of everything."
A little more careful than of everything.
Careful than of anything.
Thank you, sister.
Yes. I want to say something before we close.
Please do.
Well, what I want to say on behalf of all of us, Linda, is thank you. We appreciate you and what you've done, your presence and what you do in our community, not only for this, but the big picture. Yours is a big presence. And this has been very, very special. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And we wouldn't, again, I've said this earlier, but we would not have an arts district if it wasn't for Camilla and Camilla's vision. And it's been an honor that, you know, we were funded by the Community Redevelopment Agency to begin with, and many of you were on that initial founding committee. And then in 2014, we became a nonprofit. And then in 2017, we became an arts and cultural district recognized by the state of California, one of 14 so far. And I'm fingers crossed that since we have a surplus, there'll be more funding from the California Arts Council to expand the cultural districts and give money to the existing cultural districts. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and especially Dustin Case, who's been standing up this whole time. So I want to ask you to do a little short song to play us out. And again, when future armchairs will be on our website or in our e-news. And I want to thank each of you, Annette, Judith, Connie, Lorene, and Camilla in absentia. And also want to give a shout out to Linnell Finley, who had to leave. He spent hours on this video, and he's such a gracious, spiritual person, and I really appreciate his help. So I'm gonna toss this over to Dustin, and we'll see all y'all in life soon.
All right, thank you, Linda. This song is about embracing the fire and persisting. It's called Gasoline. If you wake up in the morning, I hope then you can smile. Spikes and thorns adorn you, ain't seen a grin for miles. And we can pour gasoline on the fire again if it don't start naturally. Why can't we pretend for anymore? Is it worth fighting for? I know it's hard to break it, a heart as cold as mine. I stand before you naked, that's my best disguise. We can pour gasoline on the fire again if it don't start naturally. Why should we pretend anymore? Is it worth fighting for? And all the time we wasted not seeing eye to eye, I would not trade the place with any other life. We can pour gasoline on the fire if it don't start naturally. Why can't we pretend anymore? It is worth fighting for.
Thank you.
And
you.
I apologize for the song quality. I know you sound much better in live, so I just want to make everybody aware to look for him. And I thank you all, and I hope to see you in person so I can give you all a big hug. Thank you, and see you on the next Armchair.
Were you going to tell us anything at the end, Linda?
Hold on, I'm going to stop the live stream and stop recording.